Thank you, EJ. Welcome everyone to the Universal Peace Federation. And our program today is sponsored by IMAP, which is one of the associations of the UPF, and it's the International Media Association for Peace. And my name is Ray LaPauque, and I'll be your moderator and host today. Our topic or theme today is the voice of the voiceless, responsibility of the media to defend religious freedom. And we have three excellent speakers with us today. The first will be Dr. Frank Kaufman. He'll be speaking on religious illiteracy and religious freedom. Ms. Susanna Kinnear will be speaking on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the Church's campaign for its application. And Reverend Luke Higuchi on the current religious freedom crisis in Japan. Before I introduce our speakers, I'd like to read a little statement from IMAP. The International Media Association for Peace webinars are an open forum in which journalists and scholars can discuss issues freely, and it promotes the defense of human rights, of which most fundamental is freedom of religion. Defending and promoting religious freedom through journalism and scholarly research is of utmost importance today. Freedom of religious or belief, including the ability to worship in peace and security, is a universal human right. We at IMAP believe that the media should use their immense power for good and should contribute to world peace by promoting religious freedom worldwide. So our first speaker today will be Dr. Frank Kaufman. Dr. Kaufman is a graduate of Vanderbilt University and president of 12 Gates Foundation. He's the editor-in-chief of New World Encyclopedia, an online general knowledge encyclopedia providing accurate and reliable information. Dr. Kaufman's work in the arena of religion and peace has involved him in interfaith and humanitarian missions, including extensive work in Israel and Palestine, Croatian refugee camps, the Eritrea-Ethiopia border, Hindu-Muslim conflict zones in India and Kashmir, revolutionary centers of southern Philippines, the Gulf, Sri Lanka, and elsewhere. And again, his topic will be religious illiteracy and religious freedom. Welcome, Dr. Kaufman.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Thank you. So I'll begin. Is that it? Yes, thank you. Thank you very much to the organizers. Congratulations for putting this together. Thank you for all the participants and guests who have logged in and are part of this. I'll keep introductory remarks and thanks to a minimum because I have a fair amount of content and I'm going to keep to the time. So the content touches very superficially on issues, all of which require far more extensive investigation. So I will turn to a PowerPoint presentation, and I'll continue with my program, my presentation from there. Okay, thank you. So here's the conference name. There's me. If people want to take a quick second to get my email address, if there's anything I raise or for any reason you want to reach me, I welcome anyone and everyone if I can be helpful ever. Also, the organizers can provide that for you. The title of this meeting is called The Responsibility of the Media to Defend Religious Freedom. That means that we deal with three things: religion, government, and media, obviously. And what are the interrelationships among these three power structures? All of these parts of living life in any society, religious, government, and media all wield power of different sorts, and anything with power competes, and ideally healthy relationships among the various spheres can obtain. So from among these, the first one I'll touch upon is religion and religious life. Religious freedom is technically the freedom that protects people's right to live, speak, and act according to their beliefs peacefully and publicly. It is more than the mere freedom to worship at a synagogue, church, or mosque. This is an important distinction to make, and an important thing to recognize. Religious freedom is supposed to protect the entirety of a person's life. I need not ever violate my religious beliefs, my conscience, and my commitments ever. So if I am a Catholic, if I function under religious freedom in the society, I should never be forced to abort a baby, and so on and so forth. So it's important to understand technically what religious freedom is. It's very often misunderstood to just mean you're allowed to think whatever you want or believe whatever you want or go wherever you want to church, or if you're a Muslim, you can go to synagogue. This is not religious freedom. Religious freedom means that you do not ever have to go against your core values and beliefs in order to conform to culture or government. In the United States, that right, and here's an important element, it gives you the right to act. You have to be religious, you must behave in a certain way. And so the rights of religious freedom guarantee our rights for our behavior, our public behavior. That's a very tenuous issue, and the government is always has to measure these things. There's certain actions that one could claim to be religious that would be problematic in civil society. In the United States, these rights that I just described are guaranteed by God himself, herself. They are unalienable. They can never be taken away. They're not given us by the government. They don't come from anywhere else other than the fact that human beings have a creator, and these rights are the same as the capacity to breathe. Remember that it's protecting all of life, more than just where you're allowed to go to church. And the guarantee is that it comes from our creator. It is not generously given to us by anyone or anything. That's in the United States. It derives from the preamble to the Declaration, to the Bill of Rights. It's the first right, freedom of conscience and freedom of religion. The United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights guarantees religious freedom, but in quite a different way. Here is Article 1 and Article 2 of the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights. We are endowed with reason and conscience and should act toward one another in a spirit of brotherhood. This is secular in its affirmation. There is no absolute authority out of which the rights of the Declaration of Human Rights derives. It's entirely voluntary, and it can change with my capacity to reason, what I feel is in my conscience. It's entirely different than the United States Bill of Rights. If you look at where people say that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights affirms religious freedom, look at it. It's just in the mix of any other and all other things that you might possibly be. You might be of a particular race, you might be of a particular color or sex or language or political or opinion or national or social origin or et cetera. And one of the things you might also have is religion, and these rights are also guaranteed you. It's not, it derives out of a secular mindset. So with this, it's important to note the difference between what freedom of religion means in the United States and what freedom of religion means for all other countries, unless they have declarations that are positively affirmative of tying it to religious origins per se. It's a very important distinction. United Nations is a secular organization. The guaranteed freedom of religion comes from secular premises. The United States was founded on religious principles. It describes our rights as being derived from a creator. So religious rights compete with other rights and laws in society. That means that the nature of the society and the intensity of its dedication to religion is crucial in order to understand how likely the religious freedom is going to be protected. presently, Japan is heavily under attack. It's definitely a freedom of religious issue, but religious freedom differs from country to country. Its only religious freedom rights is the declaration of the country to adhere to or abide by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And as you saw in my previous slide, that declaration is secular in origin, secular in its guarantee. And so when we concern ourselves with things like the intense religious persecution of a minority community in Japan, namely the Unification Group, and I don't know if there's others on the call who are in similar situations, we need to know the extent to which or precisely what freedom of religion means in the Japanese Constitution and its rights. The next thing to look at is the government or the state. The government is the only entity that can either protect or deprive religious freedom. It's the only thing that can do so. You can have cultures that make it hard to have religious freedom, but the state is under the force of its legislation, and that's where the freedom of religion can be curtailed or it can be guaranteed. So that being the case, it's very important to notice that the state will protect the rights of any minority group. It will protect but all citizens' rights, but will never do so at the expense of the ideals and responsibilities of the states. So the rights of religious freedom compete with other rights. If I live across the street from a park, if my religion obligated me to sacrifice goats at a given time in the lunar calendar, I could not do this in the park across the street, even though it's a religious act and it's guaranteed as my religious freedom. It competes with other rights and laws. And so the state's interpretation of religious rights is always in competition with all other rights. That's part of the problem we're experiencing in Japan. The state might say, every person has a right not to be disturbed after 8 p.m. And it's just the way they run their government. And that's in conflict with certain religious rights. If you want to go visit someone or have a meeting after 8. And so it's not a technicality, it's an art, and it's in constant flux. In the United States, it's strongest, it's ironclad, it's tied to our Constitution, but in other places, it's more tenuous. And even in the US, now it starts to come under serious threat, religious freedom, serious threat. Part of it is to try to move legislation in such a way that those rights are made more explicitly to compete with the rights of other communities. So in recent years, especially since the early 90s, there's the rise of this doctrine of hate crimes, hate speech, and in our present time, speech as harm and speech as violent. So now if a preacher in church says that no one in my community should ever consider a gay marriage or a homosexual marriage, that person might be accused of violence if there's legislation which adopts this doctrine of speech as harm or speech as violence. And so religious rights, now the right of religious freedom is under serious threat because it competes with other laws of the land. Here's an example of something I just picked out of the blue because it's in today's news. Rachel Levine, anybody familiar with Rachel Levine, or people familiar with Rachel Levine? This is one of President Biden's appointees. I forget exactly her. She's only recently but her role in US government affairs. She's demanding that tech companies censor gender-affirming, gender-related, quote unquote, misinformation. Some people call gender-affirming care the following: chemical castration, sterilization, physical mutilation of children and young adults. If the laws of the land, and this might be a simple description based on one's religious understanding of the nature of gender and sex at birth, the nature of being born as one of God's creatures, if the laws make it such that that is called incitement of violence, it becomes up to the government to decide whether it can guarantee religious freedom. These are the types of problems we face. It's not simply something we can just yell and scream about and insist. It has to do with the capacity to retain religion in our society. What is the role of media? That's the third element, the third point of power that I mentioned. Ideally, media has grotesquely degenerated in America more than elsewhere, but in the world at large. But ideally, media has a couple of iron rules. It should be committed to the truth first, and above all and completely. It should be independent. It should not be a pravda. It should not be at the surface of a power center. It should be unbiased. It should get all views and present all views and write accurately. It should not be cruel. It should have humanness. It should have empathy for the subjects it covers. And it should be accountable. That's why you see retractions in newspapers and so forth. That's the role of media. It has no other job. It has no other job than these five things in its ideal. And media today is nowhere near behaving with this ideal. Which part of these five things do we find the obligation to defend religious freedom? It's not there. It's simply not there, except maybe humanness. But there is an obligation of media, and that is this, that its job is to make sure that those in power do not abuse their power. Media exists to protect the powerless from the abuses of the powerful. That's where, if a religious minority or a religious community is being persecuted by the government or by agents in culture, and then the media can expose whenever the powerful are exceeding their role and their status. Only when they're exceeding their role and their status. But if agents who are hostile to religion successfully diminish the strength of religion to exert its rights and start to have the rights of transgender people as more important than the rights of religious people, the media will not have either the capacity or the structure or the orientation to protect religious freedom. It's not an arbiter of who's higher or lower. What it is an arbiter of if government is using power in excess of the laws of the land. That's the role of media. So I conclude here. I think I've kind of stayed on time, I hope, Ray. Okay, here's my conclusion. This society and culture must recognize and understand that religion is indispensable for a free democracy. If this declines, because religion competes with other rights, it will lose the protection of the state. Secondly, once religion declines in a culture, every person who's driving culture, including the media, becomes ignorant religiously. That means media doesn't even know what they're looking at. They don't know what religion is. None of them are religious. They've never been to church. They don't know how that feels. That's exaggerating. There's a lot of very religious journalists and so. But what I'm saying is that when religion goes away, like it has in the U.S. and in the free world, if religious people don't have a way to keep in the forefront how vital religious conscience and religious life and religious practice is, it will lose its protection. And our worry about what the media does will be far secondary. The government will already consider it proper to deprive people of conscience and religious act. Finally, the third and final thing I'll say, and if I've gone over, I apologize and thank you for a little extra time if I took it. interreligious mentality is crucial in a time when religion is declining, because the protection of religion must be the protection of all religion. Religions must stand together. There's that famous quote, "They came for the Jews and I said nothing." We must have every one of each other's backs. We must love one another more than we love the confidence and truth in our own community. We're protecting religion per se. And so these are my concerns. These are my warnings. I don't think that getting into a big argument with media is especially in our interest. I think our more important mission is to make sure that our land does not decline, does not become a religious wasteland. It's an important work of ours. Okay, thank you very much for the time. And thank you for the opportunity to be with you this afternoon.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kaufman. Yes, so many points that you brought up. I think we could have probably a whole webinar seminar on so many of those points. And if I may just highlight a couple things that you mentioned. You mentioned about actually, yes, defining religious freedom as endowed by our Creator and not having to conform to the mandates of the government and others. And then one point you brought up about differentiating between freedom of religion in different countries. In the United States, like you said, it is a religious nation, but the rules and bylaws of the United Nations are set up as a secular organization. So this makes it really difficult then to interpret when we go to over 150 or 200 countries trying to interpret everybody's regulations on religious freedom. We can see how complex of a situation this is. So thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ms. Susanna Kinnear, and she will be speaking. She is the Public Affairs Director for the Church of Scientology in the Western United States. And her topic will be the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and a church's campaign for its application. Ms. Kinnear has worked with her church for the past 24 years. In her capacity as Public Affairs Director, she's organized numerous community events, mainly focused on the humanitarian campaigns that the Church of Scientology sponsors, namely human rights education, drug education, disaster response, and moral education. In this capacity, she's worked with the interfaith community, law enforcement, educators, and many others to create partnerships and dynamic teamwork for the benefit of all. Welcome, Ms. Kinnear.
Thank you so much. Do you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, hi, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to this event. I love working with the interfaith community and doing a lot of, combined activities, and I've enjoyed the effort. So thank you for having me. The first thing is just kind of put in perspective on why I'm going to talk about what I'm going to talk about. I wanted to read you the aims of Scientology that was written by Scientology founder L. Ron Hubbard. And he said, "A civilization without insanity, without criminals and without war, where the able can prosper and honest beings can have rights, and where man is free to rise to greater heights, are the aims of Scientology." So a little, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was touched upon a little bit earlier. And in order to put this in perspective, what I just said is that our founder stressed a lot for Scientologists as religious people to go out and actually make, an impact and difference in the world around them. Religion is not just for yourself. You do it for, in any way you can better your own environment. And one area that really needed betterment was human rights. So that's why we work very, very strongly on human rights education. And actually, this dates back to 1948, when the United Nations wrote the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Whereas the United States has beautiful laws laid out that, preserve rights for everyone. That was not the case in many European countries and other places where those rights were completely destroyed after World War II. So born out of those atrocities that occurred to humankind after World War II, Eleanor Roosevelt was the one that led the writing of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So what we have been working on very strongly in my church is to spread awareness. There is an organization that we work with and sponsor called United for Human Rights, and the sister organization Youth for Human Rights. And I want to show you on the screen. Okay, so this is a booklet. I hope you can see it. It's called The Story of Human Rights. And it is one of the educational materials in our human rights awareness project to actually make sure people around us are, know what the human rights are, because they're actually laid out in 30 precise articles. Now, those 30 precise articles are fairly lengthy. So to handle that, this is United for Human Rights for Children. And it has those 30 articles written in a way that anyone can pick them up, even a 5-year-old, and understand how they should treat their friends and how they should treat their family. Because the problem we are facing today is human rights violations are very, very covered in media. As we all were aware of, media like to focus on scandals and bad news. That's unfortunately how they work. But in between all of that, you do actually see, in between their sensationalized news, you do also see that there are some incredible extreme atrocities happening. And that is on a world level. But then what about in a person's neighborhood, with getting people to accept each other and different religions, as an example? And I wanted to quote Eleanor Roosevelt because she said that when she wrote the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and she said, where after all the universal human rights begin, in small places close to home, so close and so small they cannot be seen on any map of the world. Unless these rights have meaning there, they have little meaning anywhere. Without concerted citizen action to uphold them close to home, we should look in vain for progress in the larger world. So that's why we put together audiovisual materials, educator curriculums for teachers, and we work and partner with a great many friends in the interfaith community to just spread the news of human rights. So now I'm talking to an audience here, which are all very aware people who very much understand and accept religious freedom, and people to be able to accept, understand and use their own religions in the world. But then it is upon us to apply Article number 29 of human rights, which is on a point of responsibility. And I want to read you one point here. It said, in Article 29, it said, everyone has duties to the community in which alone the free and full development of his personality is possible. So we then have duties to educate, inform, and bring to understanding others in regards to human rights. And just basic human rights, we have religious rights. There are many other rights as well. And in order to make it all encompassing and make everybody feel included, we work on education of human rights. And of course, religious right is a huge part of it, but there are many other rights as well. And if you have a person that you see doing something, speak out. If media is covering something in a negative view that is clearly going against somebody's religious rights, any other rights, write a letter. Download the materials on human rights on humanrights.com and educate yourself and see how you can help others also educate them. And if you do this and keep doing it, and specifically helping children understanding what human rights are, they will treat others differently. They will be the next generations of leaders in this world. And we are going to keep doing this so the same mistakes and atrocities are not repeated in the next generation. So that is my message. And, I consider very honored to speak with all of you. And I look forward to any questions you might have about my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kinnear. Yes, again, you brought so many valid points. Thank you so much for representing not just Scientology, but churches throughout America, throughout the world, and bringing awareness, especially to the interfaith community you had mentioned you're working with. And
Yeah.
you gave a lot of suggestions on how to take steps. So if you don't mind, I'll call you an activist. You're a religious freedom
absolutely.
activist. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're making through these materials accessible to everybody. And one thing particularly I was happy about that you mentioned was human rights education for children. And we're really seeing a problem with that in the United States right now. I can't imagine what's taking place around the globe with the corruption of young children and human rights violations. So again, thank you so much for your presentation today.
Thank you.
Our third presenter today is Reverend Luke Higuchi. Reverend Luke Higuchi is from Japan. He has a Master of Administrative Science from Fairleigh Dickinson University, and he's a graduate of the Unification Theological Seminary. Currently, he's the Southeast Regional Pastor of the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification in the United States. He was president of Survival Against Forced Exit, which supports stopping kidnapping and forced conversion that's taking place in Japan. So his topic today is the current religious freedom crisis in Japan. Welcome, Reverend Higuchi.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. So I try to introduce myself with sharing my screen and presentations. Okay. Let's be beginning. Thank you for coming and participating in this conference. I really appreciate invite me, the all UPF staff members, and thank you so much. And my name is Luke Higuchi. I introduce myself, who is Reverend Higuchi. I born from the Osaka, Japan, 1963, joined Unification Church, 1985. Participated 6,500 couples blessing in 1988, and kidnapped in 1989, and came to United States 1993, worked for the Japanese corporation until become a human rights activist in August 1st, 2010. Now, currently, I'm a district pastor of Georgia, South Carolina, Florida, Puerto Rico, and also pastor of Family Federation in Atlanta, Georgia. This is my family, and this is I want to give my kidnapping and confinement experience. That was happened 1989 after the getting blessing, and my parents, my relatives gathering together, welcoming me to come back to my home, and in Japan, in Osaka. They are gathering, and then we waiting for me, have dinner, and then they asking me to renounce Unification Church, and then they has to ask me. So I said, no, I don't. They grab both my hands, put into the bag, and then drop to the unknown place. So, and when I wake up, I was in the solitary confinement in a 70 square feet, dark and cold, damp and smell place, only bed and the toilet there. So the food was slit through the small slit at the bottom of the iron door every day. This is a amazing experience. I really had a hard time. And about 1 month, I've been staying in this small room. And then I had 3 months the captivity in the mental the institution in the between the Osaka and Nara. And so this is my experience. And after I get out from the hospital, I was kept it in the my relative's house. And the programmer come every day to convince me, educate me, talk about the bad things in Unification Church. So I have to pretend renouncement. I have to pretend, because I don't know when I can get out from this hospital. I have to attend the renouncement. So finally, I get out, and the programmer come to me and then kept in my relative's house for months. And then they released me and became like escape from the relative's house back to the church. So this is my experience. And then, but not only me, the most of the case, the 4,300 our brothers and sisters being kidnapping confinement in Japan. And this is one extremely case, Mr. Toru Goto. He has been kept it 12 years and 6 months confinement. And like this pictures in the one small apartment with this kind of rock, he cannot get out. And many brothers and sisters had kept it this type of room, lock in the window, cannot open. And then this is the most active minister in Japan, Yasumoto Matsunaga and Miyamura Takashi. They are involved in the Mr. Toru Goto's case. And this is one of the strategy, the communist political ideologists, the Facebook broker, anti-UC lawyers and minister, and media news and TV show, internet, all those people to have a group of the leftist ideologists to try to destroy the Unification Church. This is a kind of the diagram, and in the middle, concerned parents and relatives. They're approaching the face brokers and breakers and anti-UC lawyers and the minister approaching parents. Me and my parents had good relationship. We have really friendly and very warm heart, nice relationship between me and parents. But one day they change a lot. They are getting uneasily and worried, agitated and confused. And they negative parents association approaching them too a months and years. And they getting the funding. And of course, my parents paying those people. And then they are kidnapping planning very well. And also they rehearsing. And they also reporting to the local police in the most of the case. And because of the local police concern, somebody report, but they are clearly talking, this is a family matter, don't bother us. So this is no deadline, unlimited confinement term. We don't know when we can release. So this is the fairest thing for as the church member. So violent fanaticism is going on. So, and this all motivated, destroy the Unification Church. They are really strongly committed to do so. This is the current Prime Minister Kishida and the Cabinet Taro Kono. They are Liberal Democratic Party would sever any relationship with the Family Federation UPF in the future. They are witch hunting started. What's going on in Japan is witch hunting. It's all the person who related and the Unification Church past, they has to step down the cabinet. This kind of things happen in the Japan democratic countries. And then this is the LDP hired this leftist as advisory panel for the spiritual business marketing countermeasures. This anti-lawyer Masaki Kito, he is coming out TV show every day. And then since Prime Minister Abe had assassinated, these things happen, comes up every day is talk about the Unification Church. And then all the TV show as well as YouTuber, they are past 4 months, 5 months now, and they are talk about Unification Church, bad images. The media is responsible. What is the media is responsible? They are all the leftist opinions. This public opinion now changing to against Unification Church. So this is an example. UC member is in Japan received, threatened thousands of hate mail. For example, they saying you killed Prime Minister Abe, I kill you, your family, those kind of threatening, and go to hell with Samyang Moon. This is a letter in the Unification Church headquarters in Japan. And this is a things happen, what receiving mail with white powder, which means like a drug, cocaine or something, you know, that are saying you better make money with selling this, you know, and then Lazar send it to them, and very scary, you know, and then graffiti, the 11 Samyang Moon championship, they are compete, how they making the fun of the our founder, excessive activity that insult the founder of Unification Church. It's amazing. And this is a Goodbye Unification Church demonstration in the front of the Unification Church headquarters in Tokyo on September 10th. They are hundreds of people gathered to demonstrating, go out from Japan. That kind of like a slogan they are talking. The crazy things happen. And the Unification Church member exposed the fear and the anxiety because of bullying and cut off the friendship, our second generation in the school, and the depression, the refusing to go to school, hate speech, abusing word, and large sound truck in front of a local church. Members are forced to resign from their company, no job opportunity if you are graduate at some university in Korea and related to Unification Church company. Media harassed the ordinary member by going to their house day and night for interviews, forcing a spouse to sign divorce papers. And many things is happening in Japan now. I give you this is a clear systematic way to increase law case against Unification Church. They are now, number one, you can see the black the square, deprogrammer, anti-UC lawyer, anti-UC journalist to educate parents receiving negative educations. And then they are committed to kidnapping or confinement, forced conversion. They educate parents. This is only way to you to back to your children. And then they are try renouncing, and even renounced the 2/3 of people out of 4,300 people that getting renounced, still PTSD. And then they even how they make sure they renouncing or not, they just let them give a list of church friends and they convince other victims. So this is a very extremely things is all the leftists do, our church member. Not only renouncing not their goal. They has to give the person who kept it, then kidnapping and confinement, renounced, and let them prior, refounded spiritual selves and marriage invalidation prior, return use prior. It's happened 1980 to 2009. They are huge issue. And then many cases is a Unification Church that refounded all those things. Then because of Unification Church has compliance, and that's why decreasing low case because of the UCs had a clear compliance. And then they found out it's not much cases for the spiritual sales. They are switching to focus refund donations. They asking refund donations, you know. And then this negative media campaign currently happen, encourage family and the relatives to make claim to consumer affairs. This is how they increasing low cases by the kidnapping or confinement. And now they are media campaign doing to make negative images for encouraging the family member to do so. So this is very dangerous. this is the crisis of the privations of the religious corporations in Japan. So if this is things happen, again, all the members have another nightmare. All the deprogrammer and anti-lawyers, journalists might do the kidnapping, confinement, or similar things to Unification Church members. So this is so concerned. But we have hope. This is last slide. We have hope. The righteousness, the journalist and the lawyer now standing up for us to reveal the all the activist anti-UC movement is the communist ideology behind. So the journalists and the lawyers is now fighting for us, for our movement, to not renouncing our withdraw our religious corporation status. And this is my presentation today. If you have any question, I'm welcome to getting questions. Thank you so much. You're listening, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Reverend Higuchi. Yeah, definitely an amazing firsthand experience, and that was back in 1989, and we can still see that that's taking place today. Not just persecution, but really organized opposition to religious freedom, and it's definitely proof that we need to define what the media's responsibility is as far as religious freedom goes. Before we go into our Q&A, I'd like to invite even just for a few moments, Dr. Michael Jenkins is with us today, and Dr. Jenkins is the president of UPF International, and I'd like to invite him on to make a few comments, if you will. EJ, if you could unmute him, please. You still seem to be muted, Dr. Jenkins. Not yet. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry, Dr. Jenkins. It's not coming through. All right. I thank you for your time, though. I'm sorry we couldn't get to hear from you. EJ, are you still trying? Okay, let's go to our question and answer session.
Maybe Dr. Jenkins can try now. I think maybe
Dr. Jenkins, do you want to try again?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Beautiful.
Oh, okay.
Perfect.
Sorry about that. I do want to thank Dr. Kaufman for such an excellent presentation, and Ms. Kinnear, and also Reverend Higuchi. It's so important what we're doing. We're very grateful for the International Religious Freedom Roundtable that has been really organizing so many people who are involved all over the world. And the situation of religious freedom is getting worse all over the world. It's a crisis. And I was happy Dr. Kaufman pointed out that the threat is very real in the United States. And also, we're joining with Ambassador Sam Brownback. We're going to be a partner in a program, we meaning the Washington Times Foundation, is going to join on January 31st with the International Religious Freedom Summit. And he's had this program several years. He was the ambassador at large for international religious freedom at the State Department. And we're just really excited about that. We would like everyone to consider participating in that because it's a very successful program that has really brought together all of the key religious freedom scholars and also religious leaders to really, and also the people who are being affected, to really petition all of our organizations to come together and really educate people about religious freedom and the central role it plays to allow for freedom of speech and every other freedom. And I think Dr. Kaufman highlighted that well. Thank you for all you're doing, Ray, and the IMAP team. This is a very important program today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins. Okay, if we can, let's go to our Q&A. But first of all, I'd like to also acknowledge the other team members from IMAP. Mr. Larry Moffat is the Secretary General for UPF North America, helped out putting the program together, as well as Hans Moyer, the Executive Director of IMAP for North America, and Pierre Beauregard is the IMAP representative for Canada. So thank you all. And a couple of questions. This was actually submitted by Pierre Beauregard, our IMAP director from Canada. And his comment and question is for our panelists. Evidence shows that only a minority of those people who leave a religion end up actually denouncing or disavowing this religion. So why then does the media focus so much on what Pierre is calling atrocity stories brought up by such a small minority of people? So we always hear these horror stories of people's experience. Why does the media focus on that? And Hans Moyer had somewhat of a follow-up question that we could incorporate with this. And if you can comment on this as well, how can the public keep the media accountable for such things? It's open for discussion. Okay, Ms. Kinnear, yes.
Yeah, okay, so I think all those points are very, very, very good observations on how the media operates. Unfortunately, the viewpoint they're basing their reporting on, not in all cases, but in many cases, specifically mainstream media, is that things has to include a controversy, opposing forces, sensationalized things, war, crime, sex. Those are the things that sell in their viewpoint. That's literally what they think it is. And if those things don't exist, they make them up because then they can sell news. So news in those cases are actually not reporting a fact-finding activity. It is sensationalized and writing with a viewpoint what can sell. So it is definitely within our responsibility to speak out against that. Journalists are actually meant, believe it or not, to follow an ethics code. And so I think the person would do is to write to the editor or of that newspaper or write to the owner of the TV station. And with enough people doing that, they will listen. Because if they are saying something about a certain religion or anything and any other activity that you disagree with, hearing from people that have benefited from that activity will actually start making a difference. And the other thing, in addition to attacking or answering back on what media is doing, what is very important is to flourish and prosper and keep doing well. I know people of many religions are always engaged in a lot of humanitarian causes. Publicize those humanitarian causes. It is good news. Make your efforts and what you're putting into mankind known to other people and keep doing good things.
Okay, thank you for your comments.
I'd say very quickly that there's a kind of a hierarchical tree in what eventually makes news. Susanna mentioned perfectly that the quick and hard-hitting news is always deliberately seeks controversy, and it will always be attracted to a more sensationalistic story. I don't know what can be done about that, but there is one way that media operates a little more responsibly, and that is you go from books to longer researched articles to substantial researched articles. Then you hit the day-to-day sensational gathering things. So if there could be a journalistic piece that studies that very problem per se, what percent of people who leave new religions retain a positive relationship with it, what percent are hostile and speak negatively. That becomes a reference or source of news. I know there's journalists on the call, and I don't want to be offensive or insulting, but it's very frequent that journalists under heavy pressure, they just hit the file cabinet, pull out what's there. And if it can start to be that good stuff is there, that's what they'll grab. And that's what will start to make available for these journalists to produce more balanced pieces.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Kaufman.
Okay, can I talk about that? Yes, this is the religious minority in Japan. Is Unification Church is so small populations, our members, but a very influential organizations, but still very minority. But as Dr. Frank mentions, the media don't have any experience or understanding about religion, especially Christianity. In Japan, is so many God and religions is culturally believed, and so I realized this time is Christian country in the United States, religious freedom countries, but Japan, once you get in the particular religions and extremely believe, they think we are brainwashed. They are painting to the religious activities to cults. They are not understanding, not as experience. They lack of the feeling and knowledge about religions in Japan. So it's huge cultural differences in the background, religious background differences. I felt this time the United States of America is the champion of religious freedom. I very appreciate. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Higuchi. Yeah, just a couple thoughts that I had was on that topic. One is just being responsible within our organization, which all three of you are doing. And another point is just educating, which again, all three of you are doing in your organization. So my suggestion, keep doing what you're doing, keep reaching out, and let's keep having seminars like this. Let's keep finding other people who are fighting for religious freedom, exposing the atrocities that are taking place. And I think through uniting and finding that common cause, then we can bring change. So thank you again to all the panelists who were here today. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. I was going to ask if each panelist can give a concluding remark for just a minute or so. Ms. Kinnear, Dr. Kaufman, and then Reverend Higuchi, if you would. Ms. Kinnear, do you have just a closing comment?
I'd just like to thank the organizers and thank my fellow panelists. I learned a lot. Also, not just for the presentation, but for the lives you lead, for your commitment to good. Thank Luke for tremendous life of faith and for the story of your saintly course. So it's just a word of thanks from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kaufman.
And I can follow up, and I thank you all, everyone as well. It was very, very interesting to hear from all of you. And one thing that I want to leave with, which I feel is very encouraging to me sometimes, is to know that the biggest majority of people in this world are very social personalities, and they want people to do well and be successful in life, and they care about their fellow beings. So we just always have to be really big beings and keep educating people on their human rights, keep the interfaith community strong, and in that way, we're just gonna make more and more social personalities come out and speak out for the goodness of everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you. I really want to appreciate, grateful to the IMAP staff, Ray and Broken, and thank you for inviting me to give opportunity to speak out the crisis in Japan. So I really want to everyone keep pay attention, and then somehow we can give the pressure to the Japanese government and Japanese people, encourage Japanese members from the United States of America. This is a champion of the religious freedom country. Thank you so much for everyone. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Reverend Higuchi. Again, thank you to our panelists. That was excellent presentations and discussion. And thank you to everybody who joined us on Facebook and some of the other streaming media. Really grateful. And I'd like to mention that with Universal Peace Federation, we do have other webinars Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Next week will be what we call the Washington Brief. We again, some excellent panelists talking about the geopolitical situation in Northeast Asia between Japan, Korea, China. There's a lot happening, whether it's economically or politically, and so many different ways. We'll be discussing that. Every Wednesday at 2 p.m. we have a Stopping the Violence program at 2 p.m. And on Thursdays at 1 p.m. we have our Interfaith program that's sponsored by the International Association for Peace and Development. It's an interfaith discussion. So please join us, us.upf.org. You can find us there, and all the information is needed there. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Ray.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Susanna.
Happy New Year. Everybody.
Happy New Year.
Thank you,
so
Reverend
much,
Higuchi.
everyone.
Wonderful
Thank
presentation.
A good discussion.
Thank you, Frank. John Bonner.
Thank you, Frank.
Very good, thank
Very
you.
well done.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Hi, Bill Stoner.
Thank you. Keep going. Let's support one another and support
Thank
human
you.
rights and religious freedom. God bless you all.
Thank you, Nasa.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you so
Master,
much.
that's right.
Thank you.
See you,
God bless
Daniel.
everybody. I will talk to you, Susanna, in Los Angeles again.
Yes, sir.
See you